He answered his country's call.
He deployed to the Middle East to do a full tour.
She was the woman he left behind.
You can only imagine the longing.
And despite the challenges, they made it work.
They were together for 13 years.
They had 4 beautiful daughters.
They had a bright future ahead of them.
Until, after surviving Afghanistan, he died at his own front door.
She hears a knock at the door.
The next thing she hears are gunshots.
It looked like it was personal. It was an execution.
Was it also a betrayal?
They find hundreds of text messages.
They found nude pictures.
This was more than just a fling.
But does it add up to murder?
It ain't against the law to cheat.
Or is the obvious suspect not always the right one?
They are gloating about their crime.
They consider themselves Bonnie and Clyde.
Talk about a plot twist.
This man lost his life because of that?
April 7th, 2021. It's late Wednesday night in Newport News, Virginia, a hard-working port city just across the James River from Norfolk, home to the U.S. Navy's Atlantic Fleet.
Newport News is pretty much a military town because you got one of the biggest naval bases on the East Coast right here. And you also got a couple surrounding Army bases as well.
You have a lot of active and retired military in and around Newport News.
And at 2 o'clock that April morning, the wife of one former serviceman makes a frantic call to 911.
911, what is your emergency?
Something's happened to my husband.
Okay, calm down. What is your name?
The caller is 36-year-old Danielle Shabazz.
Danielle told the operator that she and her children were away from the house that night.
But she'd called her husband, 39-year-old Sal Shabazz, to say goodnight.
Hey, baby, how's it going?
Hey.
Danielle and her husband were on the phone talking, and all of a sudden, she hears a knock at the door.
Hold on, somebody's at the door.
Who?
He went to see who it was.
What's up? Can I help you?
She hears her husband talking to whoever is at the door.
What are you talking about, man?
The next thing she hears are a series of bangs.
I'm only worried about it.
Sal. I don't know. I think it was gunshots.
Then the phone goes silent.
He won't answer me.
Your mind would just run the gamut of possibilities. Your mind just starts spinning.
She was completely terrified that something had happened to him.
Please send somebody to the house.
Sal Shabazz grew up in South Bend, Indiana, as one of 12 siblings.
His mother had 6 children, and then she adopted 6 more.
I couldn't do it without God. He called me to be the mother of these children, and he equipped me to do so, to parent them.
The fact that half his siblings were adopted wasn't all that set Sal's family apart.
He grew up with his mom being Christian, his father being of the Islam faith.
His full name is Saladin Ibn Shabazz. Saladin is an Arab name.
He was named from a historical sultan from Egypt and Syria who fought the Crusaders in the Holy Land.
From an early age, Sal lived up to his heroic name.
He was a star athlete when he was in high school.
He played varsity football from the day he walked into high school all the way through. He's broke all kind of records that have yet today to be broken.
He was very popular.
Sal Shabazz is that all-American kind of dude.
After finishing high school, Sal continued his success in college.
Sal played football for Grand Valley State and then transferred to Minnesota.
Although it wasn't without risks.
Sal was immediately deployed to the Middle East to do a full tour in Afghanistan.
And the disruptions didn't end once Sal came home from overseas.
Once Sal returned from his deployment, he was stationed in Newport News, Virginia. So Danielle packed up with her husband and they moved 800 miles away from Indiana to the Chesapeake Bay.
Together, they built a new life in Virginia.
Sal and Danielle had 4 daughters.
Danielle was working at the post office as a mail carrier, and once Sal got discharged from the military, he got a job as a forklift operator.
A decade after Sal first shipped off to Afghanistan, he and Danielle had beaten the odds.
A lot of military couples don't last after the spouse is away for such a long time.
Sal and Danielle were the exception.
It was almost like they were meant for each other.
He's a good husband. Awesome dad. He always was a provider.
They had a bright future ahead of them.
Only now, Danielle fears something terrible has happened to her husband.
Sal's wife has called Newport News police after hearing what she believes to be gunshots.
They had been talking on the phone when she heard the bangs.
He won't answer me.
And at that point, 911 dispatches the police to the house to investigate.
When officers arrive, they see nothing alarming at first.
The front door is closed. There's no sign of a gunman.
There are no signs of forced entry.
Sheriff's office.
Not taking any chances, the police carefully make entry into the Shabazz home.
Inside, they find a horrific scene.
The first thing they see is Sal Shabazz lying on the floor.
He's laying in a pool of blood.
He had been shot 4 times.
Hard-working forklift driver and Army veteran Sal Shabazz was as all-American as they come.
Sal was a very nice guy, a cool person, easy to get along with.
He had integrity, he was kind, he was honest.
And he was raising 4 children with the love of his life, his wife, Danielle.
She was someone that he felt that he could build something with, build a life with, build a family with.
But now, police are at Sal and Danielle's home in response to a desperate 911 call.
Danielle, she's on the phone with her husband, and he hears a knock at the door, and the next thing she hears are these bangs.
Sal! Sal!
She knows in her gut something's wrong.
When police enter the home, they discover that Danielle was right to fear the worst.
Sal's lying on the floor in a pool of blood.
He was bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds.
He was pronounced dead at the scene.
When homicide detectives arrive, they start their investigation by examining Sal's body.
He's been shot 2 times in the torso, twice in the head, execution style.
Near the body, homicide detectives find 4 shell casings lying on the floor.
They then took those casings and sent them off to ballistics to be tested.
Ballistics could eventually lead detectives to the murder weapon, but there's little at the scene to suggest the killer's motive.
A thorough search of the home shows that there was nothing disturbed, which ruled out the potential for robbery.
This was deliberate. This was intentional.
The question was, why target Sal?
Looking for answers, the detectives canvassed the neighborhood.
Officers talked to neighbors and asked them if they had any information.
None of the neighbors reported seeing anything suspicious.
Everybody was asleep at the time of the crime.
But the canvas could still provide some crucial information.
How you doing?
Hey, the neighbor across the street had a doorbell camera.
Doorbells have been used in cases across the country to assist in getting information to police.
It's right.
With the homeowner, detectives review the doorbell cam surveillance footage.
This video shows a black SUV which pulls up at 2 in the morning.
A shadowy black figure gets out of the SUV and then walks up to Sal's house.
Sal opened the door. They had an exchange of words.
Then the figure at the door pulled out a gun and started shooting.
The shooting played out exactly as Danielle described.
The video also appears to confirm that Sal's murder was a targeted hit.
The suspect jumps back in the SUV and he peels off with the headlights turned off.
This was strictly about killing this person.
But confirmation of how it happened doesn't get detectives any closer to solving the case.
They can't make out the person or the license plate number.
With no other leads, investigators turn to the closest thing to a witness they have.
Investigators' next move is to speak to the person who was on the phone when it happened, Danielle.
The officers sent a cruiser to pick Danielle up and bring her in to see if she could offer any additional information as to what happened to her husband.
We're sorry for your loss.
When Danielle sits down with detectives, it appears that she is still in shock.
This is a tough situation. Danielle just lost her husband. But police have to do their job.
Detectives ask Danielle to start by walking them through the events leading up to her call to 911.
We were just saying goodnight, and everything was just fine until someone knocked on the door.
Hold on, somebody's at the door.
She said he goes to the door, he answers it. She hears a conversation.
Sal.
And she hears what sounds like gunshots, and then the phone goes silent.
She just doesn't know what to do at that point.
However, Danielle does know one thing.
Do you have any idea who was at the door?
She does not hesitate to give them an answer.
There's no question in her mind who did this. No question.
It's this woman that works with me, Tashara Jackson.
I had 11 children. I had 12 children. And I told God, don't ever let me live through the experience of losing another one of my children. Take me first. I cannot do it. I feel sorry for any mother that has happened to bury more than one child. Burying one is nothing. You have to bury more than one?
Sal Shabazz's wife, Danielle, has just told detectives who she thinks gunned down the 39-year-old Army veteran in the foyer of their Newport News, Virginia home.
Sal.
Danielle tells investigators that she is convinced that Tashara Jackson, who was a fellow co-worker at the post office, is responsible for her husband's death.
What makes you think she was involved?
Tashara and I have been having problems.
She and Tashara have been going back and forth in a feud that began over a dispute at work.
What sort of problems?
I don't even know. It's just like we don't get along.
And according to Danielle, things had recently escalated.
She run into Tashara at the nail salon.
Well.
And I guess they have words.
I don't know what you looking at, so you need to put those eyeballs back in your head.
Her and Tashara got into a huge argument outside of the nail salon.
She did admit that while Tashara was getting her nails done, that she in fact slashed her tires.
You slashed Tashara tires?
I know I shouldn't have, but I just got so mad.
And things only got worse from there.
A few days later, according to Danielle, Tashara retaliated.
It was my birthday, and Sal took me to Vegas for the weekend.
When she got back, her car was vandalized.
Someone had spray painted the vehicle, slashed every single tire, and stuck a candy bar in her gas tank.
She knew exactly who it was. She knew that Tashara was behind it.
She didn't call the police, but she just didn't let it go either.
Danielle said the night of the murder, they went to go confront Tashara
Sal went with you?
Yeah.
He only goes to protect her.
According to Danielle, the confrontation occurred outside a local restaurant.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, right on time. Come and get it. Come and get it.
Because you can't mind your business.
What you gonna do about it?
They get to scrapping, Tashara and Danielle. They're going at it.
Danielle says she was gaining the upper hand when Tashara threatened to take things to the next level.
While she beating Tashara down, Tashara hollers out, grab my pistol out of her car.
That's when Sal and Danielle decided it was time to go.
You guys left?
Yeah, we jumped in the car and we got out of there.
However, Danielle says she was afraid of what would happen next.
She felt like Tashara was going to retaliate.
So she grabs the girls, goes to a hotel.
She just felt that it was safer.
Sal didn't go to the hotel with you?
I tried to get him to come with us, but he wouldn't listen.
He wants to protect his house, protect his home. He doesn't know what's going to happen next. But he just wants to make sure that they have a home to come back to.
Can you please come?
I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna protect this house, okay?
Sal, being a man, he's gonna stand his ground. If anybody comes up in here, they're gonna have to deal with me.
A few hours later, Sal was dead.
Which is why Danielle is so sure that Tashara killed him.
But while Danielle is certain, the detectives aren't so sure.
Why would this work feud escalate to where somebody is now dead?
It raises questions as Danielle trying to throw the detectives off to look in a different direction.
To rule her out definitively, detectives ask Danielle to submit to a GSR test.
It isn't uncommon in a murder to look at the spouse first.
They did do gunshot residue analysis just to make sure that she wasn't the shooter.
Based on the neighbor's door cam, though, the shooter wasn't a woman.
They are looking for a black male.
If she were not the trigger person, gunshot residue can be transferred very easily.
While they wait for the results, detectives move on to the only other lead they have, Tashara Jackson. But when she sits down for questioning the following morning, they're surprised by what they find.
She's the opposite of what Danielle portrays her as.
Tashara, based on Danielle's account, is evil, vindictive, but Tashara was in fact a loving, nurturing, church-going person with no criminal record, no violent history.
And according to Tashara, that's not the only thing contrary to what Danielle led them to believe.
Once detectives sit down with Tashara, they begin to hear a very different side of the feud between Tashara and Danielle.
Let me just tell you, she's crazy.
Tashara tells detectives that it is in fact Danielle who has been the instigator in this feud.
What supposedly triggered the feud is what really raised red flags for the detectives.
Tashara tells investigators the feud began when she found out that Danielle was having an affair with another one of their co-workers.
Has told detectives investigating her husband's murder that she was certain her co-worker Tashara Jackson was responsible.
Danielle and Tashara work at the post office together, but over the past month or so, they've been having this feud.
But according to Tashara, Danielle hadn't told detectives the whole story.
Tashara reveals to detectives that Danielle was having an affair.
His name is Rob Barnes. He works with us at the post office.
That co-worker happens to be the husband of Tashara's best friend.
According to Tashara, the feud started because she was not happy that Danielle was sleeping with her best friend's husband.
Tashara felt like Danielle was the one who escalated the entire feud when she took it upon herself to slash her tires at the nail shop.
Is that when you trashed her car?
I never touched her car.
She makes it clear that she would have never attempted to hurt her and she would not have killed her husband.
Then who did?
You need to ask Danielle. She's the one who's been cheating.
Tashara is pointing the finger at Danielle, and Danielle is pointing the finger at Tashara.
However, if Danielle is having an affair, that could give her motive to get rid of her husband.
They knew that she didn't pull the trigger, but could she have possibly had her lover do it?
To determine if Tashara is telling the truth, detectives pulled Danielle's phone records.
The detectives were able to confirm that she was, in fact, having an affair with Rob Barnes.
They find hundreds of very sexually explicit text messages between Danielle and Rob.
But as steamy as the affair was, it didn't appear to be a mere fling.
Danielle and Rob were exchanging I love you text messages.
They potentially want to be together now.
Could that have led to Sal's murder?
Or did Danielle have another reason to get rid of her husband?
When detectives dug into Danielle's past, they found out that her perfect marriage may have not been so perfect after all.
Records show that Danielle had taken out a protective order against Sal. Danielle told investigators that Sal had headbutted her after finding messages between Danielle and another man in her phone.
But when investigators talked to people who knew the couple, it sounds more like Danielle might not be so innocent.
He and Danielle had a very, very toxic relationship.
In fact, the problem started well before they were ever married.
For their senior prom, he took another young lady and Danielle would slice the tires on the car.
It was the same thing that Danielle did to Tashara years later.
According to Sal's mother, similar incidents occurred throughout the couple's relationship.
Once she was mad at Sal, she took all his clothes and put them in a pile and poured bleach on them.
By 2021, the marriage appeared all but over.
They were talking about separating, but he did not want to leave his kids. I used to tell Sal to make the necessary sacrifices to try to keep his family together for the sake of his girls.
But for all of Sal's reasons to stick things out, detectives soon learned that Danielle had potentially one big reason to want him gone.
Sal had a $156,000 life insurance policy.
The beneficiary is Danielle.
If Danielle is having this affair, the motive would be if I can get rid of my husband, collect on this policy, me and Rob Barnes got a couple extra dollars.
But an affair and a six-figure insurance policy still aren't enough to prove that Danielle was involved in her husband's death.
Nothing that the officers have is a nail in the coffin, but it damn sure didn't look good.
It did give detectives a little leverage, though.
Armed with what they've learned, detectives bring Danielle in for another round of questioning.
They immediately asked Danielle if she had any issues in her marriage to Sal.
What do you mean?
She told them they were fine, they were in a happy marriage.
She also disputes that she was messing around with Rob Barnes.
We're friends. We work together. That's all.
What she didn't know is investigators already saw the text messages.
Danielle finally concedes, yes, she was having an affair.
But it's not what you think.
She insists she had nothing to do with Sal's death.
Danielle tells detectives that she and Sal may not have had the perfect relationship, but she would have never wanted to hurt him.
She also informed the officers that she didn't even know about the life insurance policy until after he was dead.
Not that her denials do anything to relieve the detectives' suspicions.
She withheld vital information.
Still doesn't give investigators enough to charge her with anything.
However, there's also one piece of vital information that detectives have withheld from Danielle.
The gunshot residue test that was performed on Danielle during her first interview came back.
Danielle tested positive for gunshot residue.
Danielle, you tested positive for GSR.
How you gonna explain that?
with a coworker. The mother of 4 admitted that she'd been unfaithful.
While she finally owned up to the affair, she kept insisting she had nothing to do with her husband's murder.
Investigators find what Danielle is saying hard to believe.
Because detectives have recently received results from the gunshot residue test they conducted on Danielle just hours after the shooting.
And these results revealed that Danielle did in fact have residue on her hands.
When detectives confront Danielle with this information, she is genuinely stunned.
How you gonna explain that?
I did not shoot a gun that night. I swear.
Danielle is like, I have no idea where that came from.
And based on the evidence, it wasn't Danielle who shot Sal 4 times just inside the couple's front door.
They know that a man killed Sal.
If you go back to that video footage from the doorbell video, it definitely was a man who pulled the trigger.
But does that mean Danielle wasn't involved?
Detectives theorize that Danielle may have recruited her lover Rob to do the murder.
And when Danielle and her lover connected at a later point, that gunshot residue could have been transferred by the holding of hands or touching something that the trigger man touched.
Could that explain how gunshot residue ended up on Danielle's hands?
That's not the only possible explanation.
She could have gotten the residue on her hands in an innocent way.
It could have happened when she rode to the police station in the police cruiser.
Which means the gunshot residue alone is not enough to make an arrest.
All of that is just a theory rooted in speculation. And investigators will have to have more evidence before they are able to move forward with any murder charges.
And while Danielle and Rob's cell phone records provide plenty of evidence of an affair, that's all detectives are able to find.
They look through their text exchanges, and they don't have any evidence of any back and forth about plotting to kill Sal.
Police also found that there was no evidence in their phone records that had them reaching out to a third party to hire the hit.
In fact, the cell phone records appear to exonerate both Danielle and her lover.
When detectives pulled their GPS locations at the time of the murder, they hit a stumbling block.
Rob nor Danielle were even in the area based on the data from the phone records.
She was nowhere close, nor was Rob.
Does that mean Danielle and her lover are innocent? Or does it mean they're smart?
Maybe Rob left his phone at home on purpose, and Danielle made that phone call to Sal from the hotel so the cops couldn't place her at the scene.
Either way, the detectives are no closer to solving Sal's murder.
They just don't have enough evidence.
They didn't have a choice other than to continue with the investigation.
So detectives decide to take a second look at Tashara Jackson, the co-worker Danielle named as Sal's killer.
Just to rule her out, the detectives pulled Tashara's cell phone records.
Although instead of ruling Tashara out, the detectives make a surprising discovery.
GPS evidence puts Tashara in close proximity to the scene of the killing, at the time of the killing.
The records don't put her at the scene of the crime, but the reason why also arouses suspicion.
Tashara's phone was turned off only moments before the murder.
Wasn't turned back on until several hours after.
This is a stunning revelation for police. Maybe Danielle was right from the beginning, and Tashara did have something to do with Sal's murder.
However, there is still one piece of the puzzle missing.
They know that Sal was shot by a man.
She must have been waiting in the car when it happened, but who could it have been that got out of the car and actually pulled the trigger?
Digging through Tashara's phone records, the detectives soon come up with a possible answer.
And the weeks leading up to the murder, Tashara had been communicating regularly with another man who also worked at the post office.
His name is Jeremy Petway.
And they weren't talking about mail. They were having an affair.
Which is wild, considering Danielle's workplace affair is what started the feud with Tashara.
All these people sleeping around. What the heck they had going on in that post office?
Based on the text messages, Tashara's affair with Jeremy was just as hot and heavy as Danielle's tryst with Rob.
Nude photos had been sent, and the conversation even included how good their sex was. They also discussed leaving their partners and being together.
And much more important for detectives, that's not all the lovers discussed.
There are text messages where Tashara is telling Mr. Petway that she appreciates him looking out for her.
Jeremy takes back that he was the protector.
They have this exchange about being Bonnie.
The gunshot residue alone is not enough to make an arrest.
All of that is just a theory rooted in speculation. And investigators will have to have more evidence before they are able to move forward with any murder charges.
And while Danielle and Rob's cell phone records provide plenty of evidence of an affair, that's all detectives are able to find.
They look through their text exchanges, and they don't have any evidence of any back and forth about plotting to kill Sal.
Police also found that there was no evidence in their phone records that had them reaching out to a third party to hire the hit.
In fact, the cell phone records appear to exonerate both Danielle and her lover.
When detectives pulled their GPS locations at the time of the murder, they hit a stumbling block.
Rob nor Danielle were even in the area based on the data from the phone records.
She was nowhere close, nor was Rob.
Does that mean Danielle and her lover are innocent? Or does it mean they're smart?
Maybe Rob left his phone at home on purpose, and Danielle made that phone call to Sal from the hotel so the cops couldn't place her at the scene.
Either way, the detectives are no closer to solving Sal's murder.
They just don't have enough evidence.
They didn't have a choice other than to continue with the investigation.
So detectives decide to take a second look at Tashara Jackson, the co-worker Danielle named as Sal's killer.
Just to rule her out, the detectives pulled Tashara's cell phone records.
Although instead of ruling Tashara out, the detectives make a surprising discovery.
GPS evidence puts Tashara in close proximity to the scene of the killing, at the time of the killing.
The records don't put her at the scene of the crime, but the reason why also arouses suspicion.
Tashara's phone was turned off only moments before the murder.
Wasn't turned back on until several hours after.
This is a stunning revelation for police. Maybe Danielle was right from the beginning, and Tashara did have something to do with Sal's murder.
However, there is still one piece of the puzzle missing.
They know that Sal was shot by a man.
She must have been waiting in the car when it happened, but who could it have been that got out of the car and actually pulled the trigger?
Digging through Tashara's phone records, the detectives soon come up with a possible answer.
And the weeks leading up to the murder, Tashara had been communicating regularly with another man who also worked at the post office.
His name is Jeremy Petway.
And they weren't talking about mail. They were having an affair.
Which is wild, considering Danielle's workplace affair is what started the feud with Tashara.
All these people sleeping around. What the heck they had going on in that post office?
Based on the text messages, Tashara's affair with Jeremy was just as hot and heavy as Danielle's tryst with Rob.
Nude photos had been sent, and the conversation even included how good their sex was. They also discussed leaving their partners and being together.
And much more important for detectives, that's not all the lovers discussed.
There are text messages where Tashara is telling Mr. Petway that she appreciates him looking out for her.
Jeremy takes back that he was the protector.
They have this exchange about being Bonnie and Clyde.
Detectives investigating the murder of 39-year-old Sal Shabazz were all but convinced that his wife Danielle was behind his death. But new information has just turned the case on its head.
Cell phone records put Danielle's co-worker, Tashara Jackson, and Tashara's lover, Jeremy Petway, near the scene where the murder occurred.
Danielle had been pointing the finger at Tashara from the beginning.
She and this co-worker had some sort of a feud or rivalry.
Based on Tashara and Jeremy's text, Danielle was right about Tashara all along.
Although Tashara and Jeremy do not openly admit to killing Sal Shabazz, the implications are clear. In the days following the shooting, Tashara told Jeremy, "You didn't hesitate."
And he calls them Bonnie and Clyde.
To detectives, it is clear that they are gloating about their crime.
And one of Jeremy's last text messages leaves little doubt they're responsible for Sal's death.
Jeremy tells Tashara, "I gave the gun to one of our friends at work."
Detectives assumed they're texting about the murder weapon.
Investigators quickly follow up on what they've learned from the phone records.
Investigators got a warrant to search the home of the friend that Jeremy mentioned in the text message.
Police show up to this person's house.
Who else is in the house with you?
And as luck would have it, Jeremy is also there.
Jeremy, step outside. You're under arrest. Put your hands behind your back.
The police place Jeremy under arrest and search the house.
Upstairs under the friend's bed, detectives find the handgun.
The officers send the gun straight to ballistics to be tested. And when the results came back, it was indeed the weapon that was used to kill Sal.
It's just slam dunk in the mind of the investigators.
Detectives also take Tashara into custody.
She asks for an attorney and refuses to make a statement.
And at the police station, Jeremy insists that the only relationship they have is as co-workers.
But Jeremy's denials and Tashara's silence do little to deter the detectives.
Even without their confessions, police are ready to charge them with first-degree murder.
Newport News police did their job, and they did it well.
Despite everyone suspecting Danielle, the arrest couldn't have happened without her.
She was a big help because she was on the phone when it all happened.
She was also the person to first put the police on to Tashara.
But when Tashara Jackson goes on trial in March of 2022, it's also clear that her feud with Danielle led directly to Sal's death.
All of this started with Tashara not being happy about Danielle having an affair with her best friend's husband.
The disagreement escalated when Tashara and Danielle got into the argument in front of the nail salon. Danielle slashed Tashara's tires.
To retaliate, Tashara vandalized Danielle's car.
And things only escalated from there.
That led to the beatdown that Danielle gave Tashara in the restaurant parking lot.
For Tashara, it was the last straw.
She wanted to end this feud once and for all.
Prosecutors lay out how, after that altercation at the restaurant, Tashara calls her friend, Jeremy.
Now, we need to get this girl. We're gonna get her.
That begins the murder plot that ultimately ends in the death of Sal.
Just bring the car, bring the gun.
And early on the morning of April 7th, just hours after the parking lot showdown, Tashara and Jeremy set their plan in motion.
Using their phone records, prosecutors was able to show that Jeremy went to pick Tashara up.
Then, as they neared Danielle and Sal's house, Jeremy and Tashara turned off their phones.
She turns her cell phone off, not realizing that investigators can go back and see that you turned it off just before this man got killed.
But the neighbor's doorbell cam captured what happened next.
Jeremy got out of the car and went up to Danielle and Sal's front door.
They intended to shoot her, but they didn't know she wasn't at home.
They had no idea that Danielle had taken the children to the hotel.
So?
Instead, it was Sal who answered the door.
Yeah, I heard you got a problem with Tashara.
Man, we know what happened.
What are you talking about, man?
Man, don't even worry about it.
Had Danielle answered the door, she would have been the one who was killed.
Then Jeremy ditched the gun with a friend, and when detectives brought her in for questioning, Tashara used the affair to turn suspicion towards Danielle.
Then who did?
You need to ask Danielle. She's the one who's been cheating.
They thought they had it all figured out.
But the defense can't explain away Tashara's phone records.
With the text messages, there's no doubt left that this is what happened.
Even though they did not have confessions, they did not have eyewitnesses, they had enough evidence that when you put it all together, it painted one very ugly picture.
Would it be enough to convince the jury?
The jury finds Tashara guilty after less than an hour of deliberation.
And Jeremy meets the same fate.
Jeremy is convicted following his own trial.
They were both sentenced to 39 years in prison.
Tashara's lawyer tried to argue the fact that, well, since he pulled the trigger, maybe we can give her less time. The judge said, nope, she gonna get the same time as he got.
Even though the family of the deceased wanted life without parole, they were satisfied with the verdict.
I think about the number of families that don't get justice. I'll take 39 years, it's better than nothing.
But no amount of time can make up for the injustice done to Saladin Shabazz.
This was a man who served his country. This was a man who was married to the love of his life. And even though they had issues and problems, the thing that should have ended their marriage was divorce, not death.
The pain of losing my child will never go away. You mourn for that for the rest of your life. But just because he's gone out of this earth, don't mean he gone. Because he's with me.
Newark, New Jersey might be one of the most culturally diverse cities in the Northeast, but it's also one of the most dangerous. Its streets are plagued with drugs, gangs, violence, and murder. When a brutal and unprovoked attack leaves 3 beloved teens dead and another clinging to life, detectives launch a desperate fight to take back Newark streets from a gang of ruthless teenage killers before they strike again. Newark, New Jersey is a bustling port city nestled along the Passaic River, just 5 miles west of Manhattan. Throughout its history, the city has welcomed newcomers from all over the world, including thousands of African Americans fleeing the oppression of the Jim Crow South in the mid-1900s.
The Great Migration was a huge surge of African American people leaving the South at the turn of the century to escape things like lynching. And then to be able to come to Newark, they could make wages that were unheard of in the South and, you know, have a little bit more security for their lives in Newark. So Newark is just one stop away on the train from New York City, so people were coming up from the South, from areas like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, coming to New York and going to, I'm coming to Newark first, and then maybe going to New York, to Harlem.
But like it was in most cities across the country, Black migrants were often met with some of the same hostility, racism, and police brutality they had experienced in the South. Racial tensions in Newark slowly built over the years, and in July of 1967, they finally boiled over when a Black cab driver was severely beaten by police, sparking what would become known as the Newark riots.
Newark had already been known for this police brutality against African American people. So this was kind of like the powder keg that really sparked the fire. For 5 or 6 days, the National Guard rolled into Newark. 26 people were killed during that time. It was a horrific time in the history of that city.
In addition to the 26 people who lost their lives, another 700 were injured. Extensive property damage also left 12,000 African-American families struggling to survive. The city did little to help rebuild, and many Black communities fell into long-term disrepair. Crime in those same communities saw a meteoric rise over the next 2 decades.
In the 70s and 80s, it was not unusual to have 200 homicides a year in Essex County, the vast majority of which took place in the city of Newark. There was an area up on the Irvington-Newark line known as the Killing Zone.
Gangs began to take control of Newark streets, and even more violence followed.
In the early 2000s, we started to see a crime wave in Newark. It was not unusual during that time to have 5 or 6 homicides a night. During that time, when we roll into the late 90s, early 2000s, we see a shift in crime in Newark. And you would be naive if you didn't think that possibly you could be a victim, because that was the kind of reputation Newark had definitely garnered by this time. And as a person that was working in Newark, certainly, I was, aware of my surroundings and, kept my doors locked and things like that, as a way of precautionary measure to try to guard against what could have happened.
We saw things as a kid that we didn't want to see. Sometimes we didn't have a choice but to see because it was right there. There were a lot of robbery, burglaries, shootings every other week. Just growing up in Newark was very eventful, I'll say. There was always something happening. There was always stolen cars going on in the street.
In the mid-2000s, Newark's streets became even deadlier as a ruthless and dangerous gang known as MS-13 began to infiltrate the city.
MS-13 is a Central American gang that originated in El Salvador, and they're known for violence.
Their brand of brutality made the Newark's old-school Crips and Bloods look like Boy Scouts. And in 2007, a young group of MS-13 recruits would be forever linked to one of the most horrific and shocking crimes in the city's history. Just before midnight on August 4, 2007, homicide detectives in Newark are called to the scene of a shooting in an elementary school playground.
Back then, 2007, we were still on beepers. I see the 621. That automatically tells me Sheriff's Department. I said, oh, this is not gonna be good. I get there and they begin to run everything down. I meet with Detective Lido James there from the Newark Police Department. He said, hey, brother, not good.
Although there are no victims in sight, it appears a violent attack has taken place.
I see a Toyota Corolla color blue. It's there, doors are all wide open. There's some shower shoes and like a pocketbook on the ground. I can see the blood on the ground.
Detectives fan out, looking for any signs of the victim or victims. In an isolated area of the playground, about 100 yards from the initial scene, they make a gruesome discovery.
You had 3 college students that were all lined up in a wall, and they were all shot in the head and killed one after the other.
You could tell the way the bodies were positioned and the disfigurement of one of the individuals, that it was brutal and it was a massacre.
Armed robberies and other violent crimes are nothing new in Newark, but something about this scene tells detectives they're dealing with something much more sinister.
This is all about a robbery? Why are you assassinating kids over a robbery? You take their belongings and you just leave. So we knew that there had to be more to this than just a robbery. It made no sense. And I understand dead witnesses tell no tales, but it didn't match. And I said, that looks like a gang hit.
The victims are identified as 20-year-old Deshaun Harvey, 20-year-old Iofemi Hightower, and 18-year-old Terrence T.J. Ariel. But investigators learn there is a 4th victim who miraculously survived and is on her way to surgery, TJ's sister, Natasha. Natasha Ariel was a biology major at Delaware State University. She and her brother TJ grew up in Newark and came from a large and loving family. The two of them were inseparable.
Frickin' frat. They were close. Like Bonnie and Clyde close, Tom and Jerry close. He got on her nerves a lot, most of the time, but that's like, that's normal, brother and sister bond.
Natasha's brother, TJ, was about to join her at Delaware State in the fall as a freshman.
He's goofy. He's just like his sister. They both are like silly, but he's very down to earth as well. Tell it like it is. Could give you good advice as well. He was cool.
Iofemi Hightower was one of TJ and Natasha's closest friends.
They was in a marching band together. They did band camp together. She spent the night at their house to practice for the games the night before. She practiced her drums. Natasha practiced on her saxophone. TJ practiced on his cymbals. And they just did that like every other weekend for band practice and the games the night before. That was their friendship. They were like inseparable. Like sister, brother, like sister and sister. Which also made Natasha my sister because I got close to her also. And for Terrence, they were like this to a brother and sister.
The 4th member of the group was Deshaun Harvey, who was entering his junior year at Delaware State. Like Natasha, TJ, and Iofemi, Deshaun shared their love for the marching band.
Deshaun was a big lover of music. Couldn't sing a lick, but that sure did not stop him. He could dance now. He loved to dance. He actually had a music note on his arm, which I ended up getting tattooed behind my ear because of it.
The 4 friends had become inseparable, spending the summer together before the start of the next school year. They had all come together the night of August 4th to celebrate Iofemi's big news.
Natasha, Terrence, Deshaun, and Iofemi was celebrating that night that she had got accepted into Delaware State College.
But now, only an hour into their celebration, 3 of the friends are dead, and Natasha is fighting for her life. The news is devastating.
I lost it. My brother lost it. Everybody was just going crazy because we felt like our peace was stolen from us. I mean, I was like emotional off and on, but I was trying to be strong, mainly for my mom, because she was going into like a deep depression. She wouldn't talk, she wouldn't eat, she wouldn't do nothing. So I was mainly trying to be strong for her and my brother.
It was the worst feeling ever. The worst feeling I've ever experienced in my life. It was traumatizing for that to even happen. Because then I started saying to myself, like, what if you went home? Like, you would have been probably with them. So, like, what if you have gone home? So, I was up to no good for the rest of the day of August 4th. No good rest of the day. I said barely anything. The whole day was just a state of shock for me.
I think I probably spent the next month crying like all day and all night because I just couldn't understand why.
These were kids who held part-time jobs, who didn't run the streets. Not one of them had a single brush with the law in their entire lives. They were just kids doing the right thing.
No one deserves death, but this really bothered me that these are such young kids. Look like 17, 18 years old, and that makes me work that much hard to solve a case.
And the homicide squad and the new police department, there was a grim determination, I think, that we were going to get to the men who did this.
As details about the killers emerge, detectives will need every ounce of that determination to stop them before they kill again.
She had been hit with such force that the person wielding the machete had to lever the machete out of her skull to strike her again.
Now this whole thing is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is a heinous group. They'll kill you for anything.
For decades, Newark was known as one of the most dangerous cities in the country. But the murders of 3 college students in the middle-class neighborhood of Ivy Hills still comes as a shock.
The Ivy Hills area is a fairly nice area as neighborhoods in Newark go. It's a neighborhood of small, well-kept, single-family homes, and was not noted for an area of extreme violent crime.
As we started looking into the victims, you know, they weren't people that had arrests. They weren't people that were involved in gangs. They were college students. Some had scholarships. You know, they were from good families, good parents. And, you know, we started wondering, like, why would somebody just shoot 4 of them, killing 3, all in the head?
Investigators' best hope of identifying the gunman is 19-year-old Natasha Ariel, the lone survivor of the attack. But her condition is extremely dire, and no one knows if she'll pull through.
She had been shot in the head by a .357 Magnum revolver, an extremely powerful handgun. She had suffered a significant trauma.
How do you survive a gunshot wound of this magnitude? How did she survive?
So she was actually placed in the hospital under an AKA because we didn't know if somebody was going to come back to the hospital and try to do something to her.
Even if Natasha does pull through, it's impossible to know if she'll ever start, hoping to find any shred of evidence. They had paid her on some bleachers nearby.
There was actually still cold beer bottles at the scene. Some were partially drunk. And some of the bottles were actually cold and still sweating, so we knew that whoever left those beer bottles there wasn't that long ago.
Lo and behold, when they processed those bottles, they pulled a fingerprint off of the empty bottle.
Detectives rush the print to the state lab, but they know processing it will take time. While the print works its way through the system, they expand their search to a nearby apartment complex called Ivy Hill Towers.
The Ivy Hill Towers is like a melting pot. You have all different nationalities that live there. You have Russians, you have African Americans, you have Hispanics. And it just so happened we had a lot of off-duty police officers that actually work security there. So we elicited them also. They had a list of individuals who caused trouble throughout the building, throughout the neighborhood.
One of the names given to investigators is Jose Carranza, a 28-year-old illegal immigrant from Peru with ties to the violent MS-13 gang.
It was alleged that Mr. Carranza was running a crew that was doing muggings and strong-arm robberies in the Ivy Hill projects area.
He had an extensive criminal record, and he was out on bail for an aggravated assault that he committed early.
As for that fingerprint found on the bottle at the scene, within hours, detectives get a hit on that too. and it's none other than Jose Carranza, who was just landed himself and MS-13 squarely in the crosshairs of the investigation.
Now, just because we do have that match does not mean that that person actually committed that crime. He could have potentially been there prior to. We don't know, but it gave us enough to say, okay, we have a person of interest.
Unfortunately, Carranza had recently been evicted from the Ivy Hill apartments, so there's no telling where he might be now. But investigators also get some good news. Natasha is in recovery and ready to help.
She pulled through. Injury turned out not to be life-threatening. How, I don't know, especially after determining that the weapon used was a .357. It was God's will.
MS-13 has over 10,000 members throughout the United States. Their trademarks are extreme violence and torture. And until the schoolyard murders in 2007, law enforcement had no idea they were a threat to Newark.
I was more familiar with Bloods and Crips, not so much MS-13. I had to even do my homework on them. You start to learn everything about it and the heinousness of what they do. You know, they're known for the machete, known for chopping people up. I said, okay, then why is this in Newark? What do they want in Newark?
Detectives investigating the brutal attacks against 4 beloved Newark teens have just received shocking news. The only survivor of the attack, Natasha Ariel, has somehow managed to pull through. And she's willing to talk.
I had 2 major surgeries in the hospital. The first surgery was 10 hours, and then the second surgery was 6 hours.
Natasha's surgeons remove bullet fragments from her head and reconstruct her jaw. There are also deep knife wounds to her back and neck, and signs that she's been sexually assaulted.
At some point, I get to the mirror and I see a disaster. Like somebody that I just don't know, right? Face is swole. Can't move this side. Even this movement right now, there ain't nobody but God. Face paralysis, bullet fragments, ear pussed up. It's sewn completely, like there's even no ear canal. Give me Percocet, morphine, anything. I need it because my head is banging, 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 banging.
Fighting through severe pain and facial paralysis, Natasha recounts the night of the attacks.
When we went to the hospital, she was all bandaged up. She could barely talk because she had been hit pretty much on the jawbone. But she's pushing through the pain. She wanted to tell the story.
And she described the attackers when she said there was 5 of them. And I asked her to describe them. She said, well, they were Mexican. They spoke Spanish.
Detectives show Natasha a photo lineup that includes 28-year-old Jose Carranza, the same man whose prints were found on a beer bottle at the scene.
They showing me these pictures. I'm heavily drug-induced. I was in so much pain. But I'm also a willing vessel, right? Anything you need. So I didn't give them 10 on anybody, I don't think.
She did, in fact, pick out a photograph of Mr. Carranza. It wasn't as strong an identification as we would have liked. She characterized it, I believe, as a level of certainty being 7 out of 10.
It's enough for investigators to obtain an arrest warrant for Carranza. But on August 8th, in a surprise twist, they find another suspect instead.
We were canvassing the Ivy Hill projects, going apartment to apartment. Do you know Mr. Carranza? Have you seen him? And the very last apartment that they checked before they were going to knock off for the night was the apartment of Gerardo Gomez.
Gerardo answers the door. Gerardo says, I was wondering when you guys were coming. And that's weird. Why did you open up with that statement?
Even though they were looking for Carranza, a new suspect has just landed squarely and unexpectedly in their lap.
He could have said nothing. I had worked homicide for 20 years before I retired. A lot of times you want to get that guilt off your shoulders. You want to tell your story. A lot of times you're walking around daily, all day. You're wondering when the doorbell rings, is it time? Did they get me? And he really thought when we rang the doorbell, they got me.
Since Gomez is only 15 years old, his mother accompanies him to the police station for an interview. He agrees to talk.
Gerardo admits being there and begins to tell the entire story and who was involved and what happened. So we learned that his cousin, Alexander Alfaro, was there. We learned that his other cousin, Rodolfo Godinez, and he's the leader of the group. We learned that Alexander Alfaro's best friend was there, which would have been the only African-American that was there. That would have been Shahid Baskerville. Who else was there? He said, Jose Carranza, he was there. But the other guy, I don't know him. He was there, just another Spanish guy. I don't know who he is.
Gomez claims he only thought they were at the schoolyard to celebrate his birthday, and that he was shocked when the gang suddenly turned violent toward Natasha and her friends, who were innocently hanging out nearby.
He gave us some truth, some half-truths, minimizing his own involvement. He characterized himself as a bystander.
Gomez gives up some details, but police suspect there's a lot more to his story. He is immediately taken into custody, and additional warrants are issued for the others.
And once we got the statement from Gerardo, everybody now is a person of interest. We were looking for Carranza first. He actually turned himself in to the Newark Police Department that day.
Everybody in the world was looking for him at that point. And he picked up on that. Plus, we had knocked on the doors of any person who we thought might have ever met him during his entire life. He got an attorney and surrendered very publicly.
Basically, his attorney at the time turned him in to Cory Booker, so it was like a big press event. He was arrested, and it was essentially off to the races after that.
Following the arrest of MS-13 gang members Gerardo Gomez and Jose Carranza, the investigation into Newark's brutal schoolyard murders gathers even more momentum. On August 10th, detectives arrest Shahid Baskerville at his mother's home just outside Newark.
We arrived at his residence. He was waiting for us. He said, "I knew you guys would come. I seen you on the news."
Like Gomez, Shahid Baskerville is only 15 years old. Their ages come as a shock, even to seasoned investigators.
How do you persuade two 15-year-olds to do the horrible things they did? A unifying factor was the gang mentality.
You want to fit in, but sometimes you got to know when to say, that's not the way I want to go, because that way can end me up either dead, in jail, and a lot of kids don't have that strong will to say no.
Unlike Gomez, who held some details back, Shahid spills the whole story, including the name of the sixth person involved, Melvin Jovel.
And Melvin Jovel, I believe, was also a friend that also went to the Mount Vernon school at some point. They all had connections to each other, either family connections, school connections, or neighborhood connections.
According to Shahid, the shootings were Godinez's idea, as part of an MS-13 gang initiation.
Rodolfo Godinez was the individual who brought them here. He wanted to initiate a clique, an MS-13 clique in Newark in the neighborhood. And he had his cousins and his friends from the area that were also involved in this gang.
MS-13 doesn't usually have African-American males. It's usually of Hispanic descent. Rodolfo, because of his little brother, allowed Shahid to come in. You have to do murders to make your chapter bona fide. So he called them and said, let's put in this work and let's start this chapter tonight. I have some victims here. Let's do it. And that's when everyone showed up on Rodolfo's order.
Shahid Baskerville, Alexander Alfaro, and Gerardo Gomez, they were directed to bring the machete, and on their way there, they met up with Carranza, who was coming from a liquor store with beer.
And that's why his print was on the bottle.
Shahid tells police they were drinking on the bleachers when Godinez gave the signal to attack Natasha and her friends. He says Jovel was the one with the gun, a .357 Magnum.
How it went down, Jose Carranza sexually assaulted Natasha. robbed her of her belongings. He did that in concert with Shaheed Baskerville. Shaheed also indicated he took a steak knife or whatever and he cut her, which is consistent with her wounds. Rodolfo and Alexander, they were the two that actually lined Deshaun, Iofemi, and Terrence behind the wall. Alexander yielded the machete, and he's the one who mutilated the young lady. As he was striking her with the machete, he was using such force. He was slicing her and hitting the wall. Melvin was the one who actually carried out the deed of executing everyone. Terrence was praying when they shot him.
Shaheed seems to be remorseful for taking part in the murders and agrees to help with the investigation.
He was facing multiple life sentences, and I think when he thought about the case, and I think when he evaluated what happened to his friends and co-defendants, he wanted to participate as a cooperating witness.
Well, his kid watched 3 individuals, to his knowledge maybe 4, get murdered. He wants to tell the story because he wants that foot off his neck.
Family, and then from there I went to Terrence's funeral. And by the time I got to his, it was just, I was done all over again. Just like emotionally exhausted. It was a lot that day between people, cameras everywhere. It was rough.
By this time, the FBI has joined in the manhunt for the remaining 3 suspects, but it seems they may be trying to flee the country.
Intelligence had gone out pretty much all over the country looking for these people. We got some anonymous tips. They were going down the coast from MS-13 safe house to MS-13 safe house, trying to get to Texas and then to Mexico.
With Newark left reeling from the extreme violence that had taken the lives of 3 of their beloved teens, Mayor Cory Booker tries to bring calm to the city.
He was on top of the investigation. He was the face of Newark in a lot of respects, so he was very interested in this.
Any resource that we requested was immediately made available.
He did whatever he could to galvanize the community and get the police department to do what they had to do to solve that crime.
So far, the remaining suspects of Newark's violent schoolyard murders have managed to evade capture. But investigators soon get word that Rodolfo Godinez, the alleged leader of the gang, has been spotted in Maryland by an MS-13 task force. And in the early morning hours of August 19th, agents storm the location, an apartment building just outside Washington, D.C.
He told us what happened, told us everything, laid it all out. He believed that Terrence was a rival gang member that the MS-13 had problems with. So he was going to exact his revenge on them at that time, not realizing Terrence wasn't the person he was actually looking for.
He said they were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
An hour later, police arrest his brother, Alexander Alfaro, in Prince William County, Virginia.
Where Alfaro was at another MS-13 house, he was apprehended trying to flee out the back door.
Investigators apprehend the final suspect, Melvin Jovel, hiding out at a home in New Jersey. That brings their tally to 6 arrests: Geraldo Gomez, Rodolfo Godinez, Jose Carranza, Melvin Jovel, Alexander Alfaro, and Shaheed Baskerville. The Essex County Prosecutor's Office announces that 15-year-olds Gomez and Baskerville and 16-year-old Alfaro will be tried as adults.
But ultimately, a grand jury indicted them all for murder, felony murder, weapons offenses, and Baskerville and Carranza had charges of sexual assault brought against them.
It takes more than 2 years for the first member, Rodolfo Godinez, to go to trial. Natasha Ariel makes the first of what will be many appearances as the prosecution's star witness.
This was a young woman who had gone through hell. And we had great concerns about her mental ability to proceed with this. You know, we had to ask ourselves, are we re-victimizing this young woman by asking her to testify and, you know, relate the most horrible few minutes of her life? And she did it over and over and over. And what we discovered was we had a lioness. She was going to be there for each and every one of her friends.
Battling partial paralysis and chronic pain, Natasha bravely recounts the terrifying events of August 4th, 2007 for the jury.
That day, August 4th, it was my aunt's birthday. Me and TJ was hanging tough that day. We ended up linking up with Deshaun. We go pick Ayo for me up, and we riding around. And I'm like, yo, where can we go? And me and Ayo for me know about Mount Vernon because a lot of our friends from high school, the boys, they play basketball in that area. We get there, and ain't nobody there. And we just chilling, hanging out, listening to music or whatever the case may be, just chilling on this nice little summer night.
Godinez and his gang arrived just moments later and began lurking around the bleachers nearby. By the time Terrence noticed them and told the group it was time to go, it was already too late.
We go to get in the car, and that's when they were just like, oh no, y'all already know what it is. Everybody on the ground now. I've seen a gun. You know, I'm just like, okay, trying to comply, give these people anything they want. So we on the ground, and I could see feet and stuff like that over there, whatever, and they just circling around, checking us like, you know, if there's anything else we see, you know, it's over for y'all. And then out of nowhere, they showing phone rings. I'm just like, oh my goodness. They take that from him. I see her go into her pocket. I don't know if she gave him everything, but I see her take something out. And at some point, I feel like they took my chain off my neck. And that's when things get a little blurry.
TJ, Iofemi, and Deshaun are led away at gunpoint. Carranza and Baskerville assault Natasha.
At some point, somebody began to touch me in an inappropriate manner, like even pull down my shorts. And they pull my hair up. And then there's a knot that I just see blood coming because they slashed me like 3 times, like across my neck and on my shoulder. So now I'm in total panic mode, right? And I hear gunshots. And I see one of the guys, they running from down the stairs, and then he goes like this and he shoots me. And I fall. And I'm laying there in like this pool of blood, and I'm talking to myself. Like, but I'm not hearing like I used to hear. It sounds like water in my ear, like, you know, and my head is getting heavy.
The next thing she remembers is being treated by paramedics.
I kept saying, where's my brother? Where's my brother? I just keep saying that to them. Where is my brother? I'm throwing up. They trying to medicate me. Then next thing I know, I'm in the hospital. That broke my heart. 10 minutes changed the trajectory of my whole entire life.
Godinez's attorneys admit he's a member of MS-13, but deny that he took any part in the murders.
Their defense was, no, I was just there, I was watching. Yeah, you were watching while a girl was tortured with a machete and 3 kids were shot in the head.
I've always prided myself on making sure that the case was sought through to the end. And anybody can be arrested, but did we get the right person? Did we get them enough evidence to have them convicted?
Essex County prosecutors know the outcome of ringleader Rodolfo Godinez's trial will set the tone for the other killers. But any concerns they may have had are swiftly put to rest. After a 4-week trial, it takes the jury less than a day to return their verdict.
He was found guilty of all counts, and he got a 245-year sentence.
The next defendant is 21-year-old Melvin Jovel, the alleged gunman. But in September of 2010, 3 days before his trial is scheduled to start, he pleads guilty.
He pled to 3 murder counts, straight up. So he ended up getting a 245-year sentence.
Alexander Alfaro's turn in court comes in March of 2011.
He was 16 years old when this incident happened. His role was particularly sinister because he was the one who used the machete against victim Iofemi Hightower. During his trial, he did not deny that he was involved in these homicides, but he said that it was an act of duress, that the gang made him do that if he didn't do that, he would have been punished or killed himself. And he testified on his own behalf.
We were able to disprove that, in large part using the testimony of his relatives. He ultimately told his cousin that he was involved in the event. And she, to her credit, came forward and wound up testifying against him.
The jury finds Alfaro guilty of the 3 murders. He is sentenced to 212 years in prison. Shahid Baskerville and Jose Carranza are next.
Shahid ultimately did agree to enter into a plea bargain and testify against his remaining co-defendants. Shahid pled guilty to 4 counts of robbery and aggravated criminal sexual contact. He ultimately was sentenced to 30 years.
The next trial was Jose Carranza. We had good proof against him. We had his fingerprint at the crime scene. We had Natasha Ariel pointing him out in court and making the identification. There was another individual who was also in custody at the time who befriended Jose Carranza while he was in custody at the Essex County Correctional Facility. And there was a number of admissions that he made. He even drew a crime scene while he was in jail.
Carranza is also found guilty and sentenced to 155 years. The last case to be decided is the youngest member of the gang, Gerardo Gomez.
Shahid testified at trial that Gerardo Gomez possessed and held a firearm during the incident, that he was pointing it at the victims and he held them at bay. And this was a major part of what happened there. They were all acting together. He went down on all the counts as well, and he received a 195-year sentence.
There was well over 1,100 years worth of sentences for these individuals. It's not going to bring the kids back, but there's some justification that these guys will never, ever get released. The only one who stands a chance of getting released is Shahid.
I cried tears of joy because my sister was finally getting her justice. Her death wasn't going to be in vain.
The MS-13 chapter, if it had gone through with what they were trying to do, I could only imagine the amount of death, grief, hurt families this would have caused. But thanks to Natasha, that didn't happen.
The sentencing marks the end of one of the most terrifying cases in Newark's history and the beginning of significant reforms.
Since the time of the schoolyard homicides, I believe that the murder rate has gotten significantly better in the city of Newark.
For Natasha and the loved ones of her friends, there's no dwelling on the past, only hope for the future.
Iofemi, she left a piece of her in every one of us, in me, my mom, my brother, her family, her friends. She left a strong impact behind that everybody will remember.
I keep Deshaun stored on my iPad one of the pictures from his last photo shoot that he did. Every year on my birthday cake, I always put his name or a picture on him just to let him know hey, you might not be here, but we're still partying together. My brother, I wish he was here to have those conversations with me. I wish he was here to meet his nephew. I've had a lot of dreams that at least 3 of us was alive. What we would have been doing, yearning and wishing that they was here to celebrate their own birthdays and celebrate their own Christmases and things like that.
Los Angeles, California is a magical city built on the hopes and dreams of people from all over the world. But as much as the glitz and glam of Tinseltown are intertwined into the fabric of the city, so is the LAPD. It's one of the most notorious police departments in the country, with a deep history of corruption and violence. And in 2013, the entire city is gripped in paralyzing fear as one of the LAPD's own highly trained officers goes rogue, igniting a deadly rampage that sends law enforcement scrambling to stop this trained assassin before the body count rises. Los Angeles, California is the second largest city in the United States. Its famous celebrities, bright lights, and sun-drenched beaches make it a popular destination for people from all over the world.
Los Angeles is a great place. A lot of great people. You got the beach, Dodger Stadium, basketball games, football games, arts. It's just a great cultural place to be.
The greater metropolitan area contains over 18 million people, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the San Gabriel Mountains.
Southern California is a bunch of highways that converge on this massive metropolis called Los Angeles that has these outskirts, which are also cities themselves.
And since the 1900s, this expansive city has also been home to one of the largest Black populations in the country.
It wasn't uncommon for Black folks to come to Los Angeles because it offered a better opportunity than what they could have faced in the South. Everything south of the Santa Monica Freeway seemed to be kind of the dividing line. That's where Black folks were. That's South Central. Before, South Central seemed to have a negative connotation. What I grew up seeing was everybody, when white flight took over, right? And I'm a little girl, so I'm not understanding what that means. But what I did know is that eventually everybody on my block was Black. Everybody within proximity, north, south, east, and west of the street that I grew up in were Black families, people who owned their homes, who were proud to be homeowners, who spent an inordinate amount of time making sure that their property looked a certain way. There was a sense of pride in all of that.
But even on the West Coast, Black citizens couldn't escape racism and discrimination, exemplified by the treatment they often received from the city's own LAPD.
Los Angeles Police Department is known for its racism, is known for targeting Black folk. And that went on and continues to go on. It was really bad in the 80s.
We see instances daily of officers getting involved in something that's untoward in the community. Young white officers who are heavy-handed, who are what I call drunk with power in Black communities. Those people have always existed. But when you listen and you hear who's involved today that made national news, you see that they have a record and they have a history. And it's generally that small segment of knuckleheads on the police department, just like that small segment of knuckleheads in the community that are engaging in criminality. 10% of the community commits crime. So let's just say 10% of the police officers are knuckleheads. And the department knows who they are. They know who the bad apples are. They choose, for whatever reason, I think because police chiefs have an obligation and onus to protect the organism, the department, and sometimes they protect an errant officer. And so we hear those names over and over and over.
Police officers always consider themselves as hunters of men. Hunters know where the best place is to go and hunt. The Black community is the best place. It's because you can justify it. You have people with guns, high crime rate, and if you get into a shooting, nothing will happen. People who want to be aggressive, live that life like they see on television, get into shootings, they all come to South LA.
They were planting guns on people. They were planting drugs on people. They were keeping the money, the drug money that they were finding. There were some officers who were engaging in other types of business, right, out in the streets in addition to enforcing the law. So it was kind of like the Wild Wild West a little bit. If you were Black, it wasn't fun. You could be walking on the street and a cop could just stop you, search you, and haul you off to jail for no reason.
So what they're doing is they're preparing the people in the neighborhood that, yeah, you're gonna get stopped, you're gonna get your rights violated, but it's just all part of the war.
Basically, they just had carte blanche to do whatever to whomever.
The department's most publicized acts of police brutality resulted in the 1965 Watts Rebellion and the Rodney King riots in 1992.
And when I saw the Rodney King incident, I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. That's awful. I didn't know police officers did that. A couple months after that, I transferred to Southwest Division, which is in South LA. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, the Rodney King beating was probably a 3 compared to what I saw once I transferred over to South LA. It was nothing. And it happened on a nightly basis. People getting beat by police officers, batons, flashlights, brain matter coming out of their head. And it was all entertainment, you know, for most of the officers. And so those are the things that I saw, and it happened very quickly.
The actions of the LAPD would leave horrific scars throughout the Black community for decades to come.
People are still afraid of the LAPD. It's still the same. It's not going to change. There's some officers who will always find a way to go around any changes, any new laws. And that fear is still there. It's not changed. Not in the Black community.
In 2013, the LAPD would find itself engaged in a violent and bloody conflict once again. But this time, they would be the target. And the frightening and deadly retribution would come at the hands of one of their own. It begins on February 3rd, 2013, 40 miles south of Los Angeles, in the city of Irvine.
It's a very quiet suburban area. Irvine, Orange County in general, is where a lot of people escape the concrete jungle of Los Angeles and then go to Irvine to retire, to raise kids, and have a nice neighborhood.
It's Super Bowl Sunday, but while most people are enjoying the game, Irvine police are responding to an emergency call.
A resident of a condominium is going out to his vehicle, which is at the top of a parking deck. He's about to approach his car. He sees that there are 2 people slumped over in their vehicle. He immediately realizes that something isn't right, and he calls the police. When the police arrive, they discover that these 2 people who are in their vehicle have been shot. There is a female wearing a blue dress, and she's on the passenger seat. They also find a Black male, and he is in the driver's seat, and he's also slumped over.
At first, the scene has all the hallmarks of a robbery gone wrong. But as detectives take a closer look, one thing becomes clear. If robbery was the motive, the killer appears to have walked away empty-handed.
They notice that the female is wearing a huge diamond ring on her finger.
2 people found dead and there's nothing taken. It screams this is personal. This means something. It's not your typical Southern California robbery.
Outside the vehicle, detectives find even more evidence that does not add up to a robbery.
If it was just a random shooting, you'd shoot someone maybe once or twice. In this particular case, there were 14 shots fired. It was clear that whoever shot them wanted them dead because they didn't even see this coming.
It just appeared to be like an assassination.
Detectives identify the female victim as 28-year-old Monica Kwan. They learn the man in the driver's seat is her fiance, 26-year-old Keith Lawrence.
Monica was a women's basketball coach for Cal State Fullerton, and Keith was a security guard at USC. Days before they were brutally murdered, they had been engaged. He basically told her, there's no one in this world who is better for me than you. You are my winning lottery ticket. And it was just such a beautiful thing. And to see this couple's life just be taken away from them was just so heartbreaking on so many levels. And her life was just beginning. Her and Keith's life were just beginning. You know, in the future, they had wedding plans. They had, they had to plan for potential children. And they really just had everything ahead of them. And You know, everybody was super excited for them. And we don't even know, maybe they were going to go watch the Super Bowl that day with somebody, but they didn't even get a chance to do that.
Irvine is a quiet town. It's a peaceful town. And to have two people slain, ambushed, at the time, it seemed so senseless.
While the scene investigation continues, police canvass the surrounding apartments looking for witnesses. But because the murder happened during the Super Bowl that night, detectives are met with a deafening silence.
It happened a little bit after 7 p.m. and it was like the height of the football game.
Door after door, detectives come up empty. No one they spoke to heard or saw anything. With little information to go on, they begin to build victimologies on Monica and Keith, hoping something in their backgrounds will lead to a motive.
Is it a coincidence that just 2 days prior, this couple had been engaged? Were there prior relationships that they had that could have caused a scorned lover to have a grudge against one or both of them?
Detectives find no evidence of any enemies or illicit affairs, no gambling debts or a history of drugs. But they do find that Monica's father, Randall Kwan, had once busted up gangs for the LAPD.
Randall Kwan was a Chinese-American police officer, and when he was a part of the LAPD, he was running a squad that was targeting Asian gangs.
Had Monica and Keith become the unfortunate collateral damage of a gang's revenge hit against her father? With few other leads, it's a connection Irvine detectives can't ignore.
As they're looking at Randall, it seems so far-fetched that if someone wants to target someone, that they would target their children. But at this point, officers don't want to close any doors.
There's a war on crime. There's a war on gangs. Everybody knows in wartime, you have collateral damage.
You know, it's one thing to go after the people that you don't like. It's a whole different story to go after their kids. That's like something the mafia would do. People like that who don't mess around, something you see in the movies.
And in a case worthy of a Hollywood blockbuster, there's a plot twist no one sees coming. Within hours of the murders, the killer will reveal himself to the world. And when he does, Southern California will descend into all-out chaos.
He has planned this, and not only did he plan this, he has a hit list.
At that point in time, and no one was safe as far as we were concerned.
He's out for blood. You have somebody who's trained to kill and who's willing to kill anybody to prove a point.
The typically quiet community of Irvine, California, has become the scene of a mysterious and especially brutal double homicide. The victims, Monica Kwan and her fiancé, Keith Lawrence, don't appear to have any enemies who wanted them dead. Investigators learn they might have been targeted for a different reason. Monica's father, Randall Kwan, and his past work as a gang detective with the LAPD.
If you know anything about gangs, you know that they are very vengeful and they might want to get revenge if Randall Kwan was behind a big takedown. And as police are looking at this, they start to wonder if maybe Randall was the emotional target and his daughter just happened to be collateral damage.
While detectives begin looking into Detective Kwan's old cases, a police agency 100 miles south of Irvine unwittingly becomes involved in the investigation as well. It started when an automotive worker was taking out some trash on February 4th, the day after the Irvine murders, when he spotted some discarded police gear in a dumpster and alerted the local authorities. The items include a ballistic vest, 2 AR-15 magazines, an LAPD uniform, and a field notebook with 2 police officers' names, Dorner and Evans. The officer calls into dispatch and runs both names.
They search Dorner, and that name doesn't come up in the system.
They do find information on Teresa Evans, however. She's a sergeant with the LAPD. They contact Evans, but she has no idea why her name would be associated with the discarded gear.
Then they mention the other name, which is Dorner. And she is like, yes, I do recognize that name. She tells them that he's basically bad news. He was fired from the LAPD.
Christopher Dorner had been fired from the LAPD for filing a false report in 2007. Evans wonders why his name is coming up now, a full 5 years after his termination. She finds her answer when she arrives for her shift later that night.
She overhears people talking about Randall Quan, that he's not going to be coming into the office for a while because his daughter was just murdered. And Evans stops dead in her tracks. Randall Quan had made the rank of captain, but once he finished with the LAPD, he became an attorney. Evans remembers that when Dorner was going to be fired during his Board of Rights hearing, Randall Quan represented him in the hearing.
Evans contacts the detectives investigating the Quan and Lawrence murders in Irvine and tells them what she knows about Dorner.
Teresa Evans had worked with Christopher Dorner years earlier. She was his training officer, so whenever they would go on patrols, they would go together, and she was kind of supervising him, making sure that he knew the ropes.
He's basically what we call a boot. He's just getting off probation.
But an incident in 2007 led to Dorner and Evans having a huge falling out.
There's an incident that happens in front of a hotel where Evans and Dorner are called to the scene, and there is a man who is there, and they're trying to tell him he has to keep it moving, and he is resisting. There's a scuffle between Dorner and this man, and Christopher Dorner takes this man to the ground.
Is fired.
So the Los Angeles Police Department's, their take was, hey, this definitely did not happen. This guy is entirely making this up.
They found in favor of his sergeant and basically said that he had lied.
You know, that really set him off.
There was a statement of someone who was present at the Board of Rights. They said that Christopher Dorner was wound really tight. I mean, he was physically upset when he was fired, and he had to be escorted out.
He believed he was wrongfully terminated, and they were trying to destroy his life because he spoke out against his training officer. He crossed that thin blue line.
Christopher Dorner felt that his attorney, Randall Quan, cared more about protecting the LAPD and Teresa Evans than him, and that he never received a fair trial or fair representation.
Christopher Dorner, in his mind, the attorney that he hired was friends with everybody on the department. He really didn't want to represent him. He was just there taking his money. So Christopher Dorner felt that this attorney was a big reason that he couldn't get his job back.
He became more and more and more psychotic after that occurred, and more dangerous.
5 years had passed since Dorner's firing, and it seemed like he had quietly moved on with his life. But now, if their gut instincts are right, it appears that assumption couldn't be farther from the truth.
Once they put two and two together, that was who was probably the guy. It was like kicking a hornet's nest. They've hurt me, and I'm going to go after them, and I'm going to kill them, and worse than that, I'm going to kill their families. That's not about justice. That's about revenge.
He wanted his old attorney to feel what he felt.
Soon, all of Los Angeles and the world would know just how vengeful Christopher Dorner could be.
A day or two later, after these two individuals had been shot and killed, there was this publication on the internet of his manifesto, and then things just got crazier after that.
So you have a U.S.-trained Navy, LAPD, golden boy turned into a serial killer and a terrorist. And yeah, terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
Christopher Dorner's termination from the LAPD occurred in 2007, and his appeal was denied in 2008. If he did have a vendetta against his former LAPD attorney, Randall Quan, why take it out on Quan's family?
To me, if you want someone to suffer, you can kill them, but then their suffering is over because they're dead. But if you kill a close family member or a loved one, then their suffering continues for the rest of their life.
Following the murders of Monica Quan and her fiancé, Keith Lawrence, Detectives firmly believe that fired LAPD officer Christopher Dorner is behind the killings. They've since recovered surveillance footage of Dorner discarding police gear with his name in a dumpster 100 miles south of LA. They also tracked down a surveillance image of him at a hotel in Irvine just days before the murders.
There was a photo of him kind of staring up, and that flashed across the screen once they got a hold of it.
Records show that Dorner also has several guns registered in his name, including the same type used in the murders.
He was well-trained and well-armed, and that's scary.
But there's little about Dorner's history before the LAPD that suggests he would become a cold-blooded killer.
Christopher Dorner grew up in Southern California, I believe in the Cypress and La Palma area, which we would call the suburbs. And he had a relatively normal upbringing.
He seemed like, in a sense, your all-American good boy, like a very, very straight-laced human being.
He's very nice, very polite. He's a big guy. I'd say probably about 260, maybe 6'1". So he didn't really have to make too much noise for people to know that he was around.
He played football as a running back in college. Then, was in the Naval Reserve for many years. And then he joined the Los Angeles Police Department.
He was very sincere about the desire to be in law enforcement. It wasn't going to be just a, job to make money. He wanted to go the distance and have a career. He was anxious to go to patrol and then see what's out there and then promote and go be an investigator. That's what it seemed like that he wanted to do.
Christopher Dorner was all about integrity, honor, commitment, courage. Part of his moral fiber was doing what was right when no one was looking. Unfortunately for him, however, not everyone was like him. Christopher Dorner was taking notes in his mind about all the people who were doing wrong things when no one was looking.
I didn't see this coming like everybody else didn't see it coming.
Armed with warrants and heavy firepower, swarms of investigators descend on his last known address, but there's no sign of Dorner anywhere.
Christopher Dorner has become a ghost all over again.
His whereabouts now unknown, Dorner sends them a frightening and very public message from the shadows.
Anderson Cooper, the CNN host, received a package from Christopher Dorner. And the package contained a DVD of Dorner himself, a single Post-it note with something to the effect of, "I did not lie," and coins with bullet holes in them. Talk about a very scary package to get, especially if you're a newscaster.
Dorner also outlines his deadly mission in a Facebook manifesto. It's addressed to America, and the subject is Last Resort.
He begins with saying to my friends, when you discover what I'm about to do, just realize that this was a necessary evil. I am done with the injustices that have occurred to me throughout my entire life.
Over and over again, he tells the story of being the victim of racism. And he tells it in such a way that nothing is ever done about it.
That moment when he was terminated from the job that Christopher Dorner believes that he was born to do, he in essence says, my life was over. That day I died. And from that moment on, he planned how he was going to basically get back his name. And for him, the necessary evil was committing violence.
Reading his manifesto, I just feel like he was just so hurt. He was just so disappointed. He couldn't take it anymore. But I think for him, the breaking point was being told he's a liar.
Dorner's manifesto makes it clear he intends to keep killing until the LAPD clears his name.
In this manifesto, it listed 40 law enforcement personnel that were targets of his that he was intending on killing potentially.
He actually says, my high-value targets, and he lists them from people who were a part of his Board of Rights that caused him to be terminated. But not only them, but their family members. And now this is where we're getting to Monica and her fiance, Keith.
He wanted to kill that person's daughter to make him hurt like he was hurting.
After this, he also goes after white officers who victimize minorities. He talks about Black superior officers who victimize white officers, Latino officers who discriminate against their own kind. He even mentions lesbian officers who basically make men feel inferior. And the list goes on.
A lot of people get fired from their jobs. They don't go on killing sprees. I can't really speculate to what it was that pushed him over the edge. All that we know is that Christopher Dorner went over the edge.
Dorner's manifesto is a frightening blueprint of the violent bloodshed he fully intends to release throughout Los Angeles.
It was like kicking a hornet's nest. Like the entire Southern California region came to life. I remember San Bernardino, Los Angeles County, Orange County, all basically put out an APB on this guy.
But as the hunt for Dorner kicks into high gear, the officers chasing him can't help but wonder if they might be his next targets.
You have a cop who has a hit list and he's armed to the teeth. He's already killed 2 people and he is ready to kill more. It was the first time in my life I've ever seen the police scared.
Christopher Dorner's alarming manifesto has triggered an all-out panic, and the LAPD is under pressure to stop a killer they trained to protect and serve.
The manhunt for Christopher Dorner was unlike anything I had ever seen. I think a lot of Angelenos had ever seen.
To see someone that used to be a member of law enforcement go after, people in the Brotherhood, it's unnerving.
He's not just any chump with a gun. He's somebody who knows how to use it, and he has a hit list. He was ready to take on the police force at large.
He basically says, I am one step ahead of you. Whatever you think I'm going to do, I'm probably not going to do that. I'm going to do something else. And so he even kind of taunts the LAPD. They actually put out a team of protection for at least 30 officers that were named, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
In our city, our chief at the time came from LAPD. So we had a guard on his house. Dorner's sergeant lived in our city in Long Beach, and we had a guard on her house. The amount of diligence in law enforcement in this area was just off the scale. We're riding too deep. Everybody, even sergeants.
Fear sweeps through every inch of the city, and thousands of tips pour in.
The media was just going crazy with this story. My entire feed was just all of these people in awe that somebody was specifically targeting police officers. The story was everywhere. You couldn't escape it.
One caller says Dorner tried to steal his boat. Another says he saw Dorner near the Mexican border. There were also reported sightings as far away as Denver and Chicago. Law enforcement throughout Southern California scrambles to keep up.
This was the first time you actually had a guy with experience who had knowledge of the police department was actually hunting police officers. So they were absolutely terrified. And they knew that they probably only had one chance at it because the arsenal that he had and the skill that he had.
The whole amount of time that they couldn't find him, he could have gone east, he could have gone north, he could have driven into Mexico. He had the opportunity to do all that.
But in the early morning hours of February 7th, Dorner's truck is spotted in nearby Corona, California.
He didn't happen to Corona coincidentally. He was on a mission. The chairman of the Board of Rights lived in Corona. He had an axe to grind with the chairman of his Board of Rights, who ultimately found him guilty. And so he was headed to his house to deal with him and maybe his family.
A repo man stopped for fuel spots Dorner staking out the area.
Dorner actually sees the guy kind of staring a little bit too long.
As Dorner drives off, the repo man calls 911. Officers arrive just in time to give chase.
They take off behind him, but they don't have their sirens on. They're not trying to scare him off. They just want to see what his next steps are. But what they don't realize is that Christopher Dorner knows that they're following him, and he has set up an ambush on the off-ramp. So as the police cruiser is coming off the off-ramp, Christopher Dorner is waiting, and he riddles the police car with bullets.
Fortunately, none of the officers are killed, but Dorner escapes and heads due east.
If you were trying to run away from the situation, you would...
And officials face a grim question. How many more will die before he can be stopped?
He's well trained, and he knows when to strike, how to strike, and carry out whatever he's going to be doing. We call him a domestic terrorist, which is what he was.
The police had to find him as quickly as possible and bring him to justice by whatever means necessary.
After Dorner kills one Riverside Sheriff's deputy and gravely injures another, Riverside County's District Attorney Paul Zellerbach puts himself and his family squarely within Dorner's crosshairs.
I went on national television when I filed the murder charges against Mr. Dorner and also said our office would be seeking the death penalty. Law enforcement, they felt that my life was at risk. Not only my life, but my family's life. Yeah, I put myself out there, and I understand the risk that goes with that, but my family didn't sign up for that. That was very concerning to me.
The search for Christopher Dorner has reached a fever pitch after the brazen attacks on 4 officers. But Dorner continues to evade police, with no sign of where or when he might strike next.
The LAPD had issued a $1 million bounty for Christopher Dorner. So you know that things are getting very serious when they are offering that much money.
The entire Southern California area, cops just went almost insane. It must have been like something out of the Purge movies, where you have cops deathly afraid for their lives, hunting a ghost who's hiding amongst the city.
The fear and paranoia spreading among law enforcement only adds to the chaos.
They were just randomly shooting at pickup trucks that they just assumed, was Christopher Dorner.
You didn't want to get pulled over. You didn't want to be mistaken for him. You didn't want to have the same kind of car he had.
In the mayhem of the manhunt, police open fire on a truck driven by 2 women delivering newspapers. They also fire over 100 rounds into another truck driven by a white man just minutes later.
It showed that LAPD was terrified. They didn't have a control of the situation.
Every bald-headed black man went indoors because they did not want to run the risk of being mistaken for Christopher Dorner. He could be anywhere and everywhere all at the same time, and everybody was on edge.
At 8:30 a.m. on February 7th, several hours after the shooting in Riverside, Dorner's truck is found abandoned 50 miles away.
His pickup truck had been burned in a remote area up in the San Bernardino Mountains near Big Bear Lake.
San Bernardino is a little bit north of Riverside. It's a very mountainous area.
Unfortunately, they don't know if he has another vehicle, if he's on foot, if he's living on the land. So police officers, they bring in everything that they can. They bring in dogs to come hunt for Christopher Dorner. They bring in helicopters. They have foot patrols.
I think once he got up into that area, he's pretty much bought and paid for. I mean, you don't know the area as well as they do. Your chances of being able to walk out of there are not that good. Your chances of being able to drive out of there are 0.
Still, Dorner manages to elude police for another 3 days before there is another encounter.
Chaos. Police shooting Christopher Dorner shooting police. There are vehicles that have been crashed. There's carjackings. And it's clear that there is going to be more bloodshed on this mountain.
2 of the deputies involved in the manhunt stop to investigate one of the cabins on the mountain. What they don't know is that Christopher Dorner is hiding inside, waiting for a target, and he has the upper hand.
Right then, you hear gunshots. The first officers hit all over his body. I mean, it is a barrage of bullets. The second deputy was able to get out of the vehicle and stand behind the vehicle to take shelter. He was trying to call in radio support for a helicopter, specifically trying to pinpoint them to the exact cabin that Christopher Dorner was sitting in. He revealed his body just enough that Christopher Dorner took one shot and hit him right in the chest. He died almost immediately.
Moments later, backup arrives and the cabin is surrounded by dozens of highly trained SWAT officers. For Dorner, there appears to be no escape.
It becomes more dangerous if that's even possible. So they tried to call him out. Mr. Dorner was not responding to their requests to surrender or give himself up, and he was continuing to engage in the firefight.
It turns into a big SWAT scenario, and he's either going to come out or they're going to go in after him.
Whatever they needed to do to get him arrested or to get him to stop harming the public needed to happen, because to him this meant war.
You can tell they didn't want to take him alive. They wanted to kill him.
After 10 terrifying days, SWAT teams have cornered Christopher Dorner in a remote cabin on Big Bear Mountain. But he's not going down without a fight.
And they had an intense standoff. And law enforcement felt that they didn't have the upper hand. They were at a disadvantage. So they ordered the house to be burned.
They threw smoke bombs, and that didn't have much success initially. And so they went to a higher level pyrotechnic kind of bomb and fired those into the house, which ultimately caught the cabin on fire.
But Dorner seems to have no intention of being taken alive.
Shortly after the fire started, and then they heard one single gunshot.
Eventually, once the fire dies down, they're able to go into the cabin, and that's when they find a man lying in these ashes, and he has one gunshot wound to the head.
Through dental records, they were able to identify it 100% as Mr. Dorner, and a bullet in his head was self-inflicted.
Police also find Dorner's 9mm pistol in the burned ruins of the cabin. It's the same gun used to kill Monica Kwan and Keith Lawrence. The murder investigation and the city's nightmare is finally over.
It was a huge sigh of relief. It was sad that another deputy had to lose his life in that firefight, but at the same time, it was over. I was looking forward to prosecuting Mr. Dorner personally, and I'm sure Orange County was, and San Bernardino County would as well. But Mr. Dorner decided to end it in his own manner.
Delusions of grandeur combined with bad decisions got the best of him. It was really a unique, emergent blend of all of these different things that came together to create this particular monster.
But as the fear that gripped Los Angeles subsides, public opinion of Dorner's shooting spree becomes surprisingly split.
What was really, really interesting to see was half of the people that you would see were totally in favor of this guy, and the other half were just totally against him. And that wasn't always fitting with the neat political boxes that we put people in.
Many empathize with Dorner's fight against the LAPD and its history of racist law enforcement practices. Some even see him as a folk hero.
A lot of people looked at Christopher Dorner and the killings that happened as if it was a team sport. Here's who I'm rooting for. I had bad experiences with the police. I love this guy no matter what, even if he's going about it the worst way possible. And then there were other people who loved the police and they just couldn't stand Christopher Dorner. But I think for the majority of people, it created this conflict in you because these social issues mattered and they came to the surface in such a way that we hadn't seen since Rodney King.
What he did was not the right way. It was horrible. But what it did was it did open the eyes of the mainstream media and people in general.
I think Christopher Dorner's situation probably resonated the most with Black police officers. They didn't agree with what he did and how he did it. But that feeling of being lied on and being retaliated against, I don't know very many Black police officers in the LAPD that don't have a story around racism within that department and things that have happened to them.
You see police beatings, you see people making allegations they were beat, and it just triggers you. You never get away from it. It starts to grow until one day, you snap.
In the years since Dorner's rampage, the LAPD continues to struggle with its public image. The legacy of fear and mistrust in communities of color will not easily be reversed.
Have we made some changes? Absolutely. But we still have a lot of the same problems going on. We still have unarmed folks being killed by the police. We still have Black folks being targeted by the police, being, randomly stopped and pulled over more than any other race.
And I believe that a lot of officers are mentally ill. Based on what they go through, they have these psychoses and they need to have counseling, and there needs to be more done on that level. Dorner acted on his impulse, but that's something that law enforcement agencies need to address because there are a lot of ticking time bombs out there.